Welcome back to the Midweek Update.
Welcome to this week's Midweek Update.
Today, let's look at how the soccer team has returned to playing this year, and what people's opinions have been on the vaccine.
This and more as we take a look at what's going on this week on Midweek Update. I'm Petraitis.
And I'm Louie, Saraceni, and welcome back to the Midweek Update, the BMB show that brings you closer to the people and places in and around the Mepham community.
So Louie, how does it feel to be hosting an episode of Midweek Update?
It's definitely cool to be on this side of the camera for once. I've been producing the show for the past 2 years, so it's interesting to finally see what it's like to be host. How do you like hosting so far?
I'm enjoying it. At the very beginning of the shutdown last year, I was a sports reporter on the show a couple of times, but I've never hosted until now.
It's crazy to think that first episode from home was over a year ago, but it seems like we're heading in the right direction towards this pandemic being over.
Right. As people continue to get vaccinated, hopefully we can continue getting back to normal. BMB's Victoria Caminiti got the opinions of some members of the community about the vaccination process so far.
The arrival of the COVID vaccine has drastically impacted people's perceptions on daily life. Now that adults are eligible to get vaccinated, what's next? With things starting to open up and rules being changed, opinions are starting to vary in the community. Dr. Komar, an AP biology teacher at Mepham, thinks people will act differently.
People definitely act differently now that they're being vaccinated. I know that's true of myself. I feel a lot more relaxed, and I think people feel a lot more relaxed as well, that they're probably not going to get it.
Miss Siegel, one of Mepham's math teachers, agrees.
I think people will be more comfortable just going into stores instead of doing a lot of online shopping. Perhaps people will go to malls again and go to restaurants and go to businesses again just to build up the economy.
Victoria Amara, a Mepham student, conducted a survey to figure out adults' views on the vaccine.
So right now about 254 people have done the survey, which is a lot, and only adults have done the survey.
Since Victoria has done this survey, she has learned many things. One thing she has learned is how people feel about everyone getting the vaccine.
Most people want the COVID vaccine to be mandatory, but then it was like a third of people did not want that to be mandatory.
And I think that we're going to start to see things open up a little bit. I think we're going to have a much more normalized summer than we had last year as more and more people get vaccinated.
With the vaccines being distributed and people starting to go out more, the world of COVID is changing once again, this time for the better. From BMB, I'm Victoria Caminiti.
Victoria, I'm glad so many people are getting their vaccine, so we can start getting back to normal going into the summer and next year.
Right. But in the meantime, we have to continue following the safety guidelines. So far this year, a lot of sports and other activities in the district have been able to safely get started again.
One of these has been soccer. Despite having to wear masks, the team has been able to play this season. BMB's Haley Hepworth spoke to the Mepham soccer coach and some players about the restrictions and what the season has meant for them.
With the coronavirus pandemic still playing a large role in everyone's lives, it has had a great impact on sports and student athletes.
Athletics is a really important piece and motivator in kids' lives. I think it's super important. I know as an athlete myself, this is what I'm looking forward to.
Coach Goss, who has been coaching the varsity soccer team for 5 years, has watched the sport undergo many changes, but none like this.
I noticed, when we did fitness tests, the boys struggled, or they did worse than they normally have, than they did in the fall when they ran their 1.5 mile test. Some guys were doing a minute more. Granted, that could be a mix of not doing as much on their own, but it could have a lot to do with the mask as well. Definitely is a factor.
It's really just a mask and having to play with it on and not taking it off.
Sophomore Kosta Karousis, who has been playing on varsity for 2 years, is watching the sport change like never before.
It's been rough because we've had a lot of delays and kids that haven't been able to go to practice because they've been quarantined.
When we get there in the beginning of practice, we have to use the same sign-in NERIC sheet, and then we have to get our temperatures taken. And we always have to stay socially distant at the beginning of practice.
As a senior, Captain John Tucci is excited to have a season, even if it does look different than normal.
I'm happy that it's happened because I'm in my senior year, and I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same, that as long as we take the right precautions, it should all be okay, I guess.
So there's lots of different protocols and procedures that we have to follow, and they seem to come out every few days, so we have to adapt and modify whatever we're doing very quickly. And it just requires a lot more communication between the players and the staff and the families, just keeping everyone involved. This thing seems to be changing constantly on the fly.
As the pandemic continues, the athletes and coaches will continue to adjust to the changes and adaptations to make the best out of the atypical season. For BMB, I'm Haley Hepworth.
Thanks, Haley. It's great that the season has been able to happen this year so the players can have a chance to play, especially the seniors.
Exactly, and it also gives the seniors at BMB like us a chance to record the games before we graduate. We've been posting our coverage of the games on our YouTube channel and have more on the way in the coming weeks.
Speaking of that, BMB's Matt Manno has the latest in Mepham sports.
Thanks, Sean. Spring break is over, but there was no spring break for Mepham sports as Mepham teams played 20 games over the 10-day break. BMB got spring break kicked off the right way with our coverage of the boys soccer team's 4-0 shutout of New Hyde Park, capped off by this Brandon Hislop goal off the corner kick.
Shot. Everyone in the net, see if the ball can bounce your way.
The shot goal!
That is amazing. Who?
Looks like Hislop.
Yep, it's Brandon Hislop.
We also had coverage of the Pirates' 48-27 loss to Cary this past Saturday. Last night, the boys soccer team was home against Garden City, while the badminton team took to the road to take on Long Beach. Tonight, the boys volleyball team is in action against Valley Stream Central. Costa Crunchy has a meet at Eisenhower Park, and one I might actually finally run in, and the girls soccer team is on the road at Valley Stream South. In pro news, baseball is finally back, and so is the Mets bullpen blowing games late. Where they take out the ground with that early, I don't know. Apparently 79 pitches is too much for an ace. Well, that's it for your midweek week in Mepham Sports. I'm Matt Manno. Now back to Sean and Louie in the studio.
Like I said before, stay tuned to the BMB YouTube channel to get the latest coverage of Mepham sports games.
Well, that's all for this week's midweek update. We'll be back next week with all new stories from around the BMCHSD to bring you inside the parts of the community we don't always get to see.
Until then, I'm Louie Saraceni.
And I'm Sean Petraitis, and we'll see you all next midweek. Hi, Mom.